What's going on, everyone? I'm here today joined by Snack. Hello, Snack. How's it going?
Hello, it's going great.
So, we're going to be doing a little prediction video, a little overview of what we think the metagame is going to look like, what the shifts are going to be for the Deck Devastators tournament on Sunday. So, as you can see here, we've got a bunch of cards that represent different decks and tech choices and whatnot that we're going to be talking about. Before we jump in, let me just explain. The cards up here are like the stonks equal up section. They're like the cards we think that we're going to see more of. Down here, we have the cards and decks we think that we're going to see less of. We're going to be not as good, maybe. So, would we rather start with the good stuff or the down stuff? Maybe the down stuff first. I don't know.
I think we should start with the down stuff because
Okay.
that sort of explains the good stuff.
So the first thing I have in the down stuff is Sirocco. This represents Blackwings and Vayu Turbo and just all the Blackwing, all the bird builds. The main reason I have these down here is because these were very flavor of the month following their performance in Ribbit 4, and I think a lot of people are going to be metagaming against them in a very similar way that kind of happened to a lot of the other top decks at previous tournaments, where they sort of become victims of their own success and fall out of favor briefly because of all the pre that people bring. Definitely happened with like Hero Frogs and stuff. Every tournament, people get in their head, oh, this is the new best deck of Edison format. I got to bring everything I can to counter it. And I think that's going to happen with Blackwings probably. So probably see less of them. Yeah, you can go ahead.
I totally agree because I think we saw like with people including cards in the side for Dragon Turbo, including things for like frogs like Soul Release and all like Kaiku and stuff like that. I think the same thing's going to happen with Blackwings, and maybe even more so, just because I think so many people don't want to play a Blackwing mirror.
Yeah.
And like because of the way Sirocco interacts in that mirror, where like you can be in such a winning position and just get killed by a normal summon Sirocco, both in the Vayu and in the Blackwing matchup. So I think into a field of Blackwings, I know I would never want to be playing Blackwings.
Yeah.
So if people are expecting it, I think they'll move away from it, even if it's just not even like a meta call, even if it's just like I'm not going to enjoy that. I'm not going to do that.
I think it's not impossible that we'll still see a Blackwing deck or two in Top Cut, but I don't think we'll see it.
It's a strong deck.
It is still a strong deck. I just doubt we'll see it dominate the way it did last tournament. So I think it's a stocks down kind of deck for sure.
Right. I mean, going from having the top 4 spots at Ribbit 4, I think it's hard to go anywhere.
I know. It would be difficult for them to maintain that level of success for sure.
Right.
Next, we have Hero Beat. So I think you actually thought that this deck might be good because it's good against some of these, but
yeah, my reasoning for Hero Beat is just that it had consistent success at some of the earlier RBETs. I think lots of people are drawn to this deck because it's pretty straightforward and they love the hero cards. And I think Alias is pretty good against a more pure Blackwing deck. But I do think this deck is pretty much just worse Blackwings. So I don't know. So I could see it going either way. Either it's going to get good representation and therefore it'll find a way to top and it'll continue its trend of topping, having one spot in top 8 in all these events, or it might have fallen off the map.
This is kind of my hottest take in the downtrend because I think it would be hard. This deck pretty consistently tops, and the fact that it didn't last time was kind of weird. So it's like, it would be odd if it just stayed as low as it was, but I'm not big on decks like this for 2 reasons. Number 1, because they're boring, but number 2 is because in an unsolved meta like Edison, I think that these quote-unquote like helmet decks or whatever are kind of a bad option because they have a low ceiling, meaning that like summon alias set trap cards is not getting any better anytime soon. So as the meta evolves around them and the format gets more and more solved, I'm not saying Edison's solved, I think we're years off of solved, but other decks are just going to kind of power creep decks like this. And I think we've seen this happen majorly with Gladiator Beasts. Gladiator Beasts were like the biggest deck in Edison like last year or a year or 2 ago, and now they're just completely gone because they've just been power crept. I think they're just not as good. They just can't keep up. And I
actually think
that could happen with this deck. So yeah, you can go ahead and say.
I think we might there might be a chance that we see some kind of innovation with this. I know Keegan went over some, I think it was a Swedish championship or something, where it was like a sort of a hybrid between the Neos hero beat and like a Diva hero list. So that could be interesting. I also just think that playing the Diva package in the hero beat deck instead of oceans and stuff might have some merit.
I think
more of a top end, which is what you were talking about. So
I think Codaris is the way to go. Codaris is the future of this deck.
Yeah, our teammate Dimitri played around with that too.
Yeah.
The Codaris.
All right. Speaking of Diva, we have that in the down section, and we very appropriately represented it with this card. So
true.
This deck's kind of been trending down for a while. I think you said it's kind of just been replaced by Diva Zombies, which is sort of just strictly better. So
yeah, I think it's been like subsumed by Diva Zombies, where like we saw Indica was playing Miracle Fusion in Diva Zombies, and when you're playing Diva Zombies, you're able to cut cards like Gilman, and you're not having to play, like a Snowman Eater, Upstarts, like a ton of discard traps, Treeborn, all this stuff that kind of like pad out your deck, and they're not really the things that make you win. Whereas when you're playing Diva Zombies, the hero stuff is sort of like a supplementary engine, and it makes your every card in your 40 really, really strong.
Yeah, I agree with all that. Moving on, this is not really here because it's going down. We just put this here to remind you guys that it's bad, even if this is a popular deck, Blackwings. So, yeah, this card is a trap and you shouldn't play it.
Don't be fooled by all the decks being dark decks. This card's bad.
The fact that it just eats your normal summon and loses to any removal, loses to any Book of Moon or whatever, people play a ton of that stuff in their decks.
Yeah,
it's
Book
just
of Moon, Icarus, Wing Blast, all kinds of
such negative tempo, and on top,
and drawing it into something is like
maybe you could side like one in Fairies, maybe, since it's a fairy and a light.
Yeah, you can tutor into it, but yeah.
But I think this card's garbage. All right, also in the down section, we have X-Sabers. Is this really down either? This deck kind of just has never topped, right? Or am I?
It has not. I think, I don't know, I just think it,
maybe it'll be people
so
just play it less. Fitz won't be playing it next time, and that's one less person.
I think that the best thing this deck has going for it is if people really hardcore pre the Blackwing and Bayou decks, they might just have good matchup luck and not run into anything that like plays low to the ground.
I feel like it's pretty bad against Blackwings, and it's also bad against the decks that counter Blackwings. Do you think that?
I think it's not great against frogs, but I think it does okay against it does really well against quick draw. It does well against zombies, I think.
Okay, that's fair. Maybe there's a couple decks up here it does well against. All right, what about dragons? This deck, I think I mentioned earlier, is kind of already gone. I mean, it was very flavor of the month after Ribbit 3. It was like the deck to beat after that. Everyone was like, oh, Dragon Turbo, it's the new best deck. It's ruining the meta. And then it kind of just disappeared because people started siding pre for it. So hasn't really come back.
I think it's something that you should maybe keep in mind. But like when you're like building a game plan for a tournament, you should be like, okay, what do I do against Dragon Turbo? Maybe I should get some games just so I know how it plays at least. But the deck is actually really hard to pilot well, which I think a lot of people learned when they were trying it out after the tournament where it got 2 topping spots. And a lot of people are just not gonna be able to consistently pilot it like Pro Storm and Hydro Pump were able to.
Yeah, that's fair points. I haven't seen much of this deck since. I didn't really see much of it after Ribbit 3 either. Maybe I just wasn't playing enough at that time, but I feel like there's just a few people.
A very strong deck when it's doing what it wants.
I feel like there's just a few people who play this, and they play it really well. Yeah. And that gives people the impression that it's better than it is, maybe. But I still think it's a really strong deck. It's not that represented, I guess. So, Dark Calling. So the Dark Gaia deck nearly had a kind of breakout moment at the last tournament, if I remember. I think was Tristan playing it? I don't remember. Zytalos definitely was.
Yeah, there were two people. I think Tristan and Xylatos or Zytalos.
Zytalos
I think
almost
they both got like top 12.
So they both almost topped with it. Damn, that was close.
I think so.
We could have had based decks in the top cut. Instead it was a bunch of blackwings. How did that happen?
Well, the other ones in the top were Frog Monarchs and Quick Draw, so those ones are like okay.
Yeah, okay, those were cool, but getting some dark calling decks in would have been nice. But I think those are two pretty good players playing probably near optimal lists, and it still didn't top, so I think it's probably all downhill from here. This deck's just kind of just worse than the Diva deck, in my opinion.
Which is worse than the Diva zombie deck.
Yeah, it's like several layers worse than other decks, so it was cool for a moment, almost topped, but I just don't see it going many places from here, so that's where I'm at on that.
I think there might be a meta where if people are playing lots of like flip monsters or something, this could see a comeback.
Yeah, maybe.
But, yeah, not right now.
All right, Soul Release. Why did we put this down here? I mean, I hate this card, and I think it's terrible, and it's just kind of for frogs or something, but...
Yeah. Maybe it'll be good, because maybe a bunch of people will be on frogs to counter the blackwings. I don't know.
My philosophy is either Kaiku to pre for, like, zombies and Vayu and maybe frogs, or DD Crow just as, like, the all-around best one that can disrupt things and stop you from losing to bullshit or whatever, like Norlaris.
Yeah, I think you could argue Soul Release in Fairies, but I really don't like it in any other deck.
Yeah, I think Fen sides this card. It's like it can set up your Christia, so...
Fairies just have such a tough time with frogs, and it can set, like you said, it can set up Christia or Return, so...
I mostly just see it as like a hyper pre kind of card that's kind of narrowly aimed at maybe frogs and Lightsworn, and I just don't think either of these decks are problems enough that I should have such targeted hate at them in my side. So that's where I'm at. And it's just strictly like a neg. It's just a neg 1. Like, Crow can be like a plus or a trade even kind of thing or whatever, but this card's not good.
Well, it's not neg if you're hitting like Vayu and Sirocco or something.
Okay, yeah, if they committed resources to put things in grave, it's kind of complicated, but...
Yeah, the card advantage calculations.
I think there are better alternatives for sure. All right, these cards are all kind of related, but the metagame's kind of shifting to a place where we're seeing less of these discard traps. I mean, they're still much more prevalent than they were last year, and they'll probably remain that way for a while because I think they're very good. But we're not seeing just the total domination of the metagame by discard traps, which is why also these like 7 tools and trapstun sort of techs that people were playing to kind of counter that are probably also going to be a bit worse. So that's basically...
Right, you're not going to be able to catch people on a... get a plus by chaining Trapstun or 7 tools to a Wing Blast or a Raigeki Break. Because we saw that, I think people messed around with Hero Frogs. They're running like 6 discard traps. And so these cards were actually good even against decks that don't run that many traps. But the Frog decks that we've been seeing lately, like the one that Rognak won with, are playing like only like Threatening Roar and like maybe 2 Raigeki Break, stuff like that. So
was he not playing Mirror or Dust Shoot?
He was playing Mirror. I think he was playing Mirror, 2 Raigeki Break, and 2 Threatening Roar.
Okay.
Something like that. But it's like the trap lineup on these non-hero Frog decks are a lot smaller. And Ragnar plays more traps than even most Frog players would.
Yeah, okay. I could see that. And yeah, I just definitely agree.
And with Diva Hero, I think Diva Hero's like falling out of favor. So like you can hit a couple discard traps in the zombie hero list, but they're not playing 4 like Diva Hero was.
Silchus's list was playing like 4, and the zombie list more so plays like 2, maybe.
Exactly.
Maybe 3.
Exactly.
Okay, well, we're done with our stocks down kind of list. Let's move on to the stonks up kind of list. So the first one, I think this one is kind of obvious. We've seen a lot more of it because it counters the Blackwing deck, and the Blackwing deck was like the big thing recently. So Fairies, they're interesting. They're really hard to pilot.
They're very, very hard
which
to
could be an obstacle to them doing well. But I think someone will do well with Fairies. I think between this deck and these 2 decks, there's been a lot of what I dubbed like Edison format media propaganda pushing them. like between me and Keegan, we've just been just really, really standing these decks on our channel and in the community.
And rightfully so.
Yeah, so I think we'll probably see the teleport, like, Krebons Powerwell Dark Arm deck, and of course the Kurez deck, along with Fairies. If only because of all the kind of YouTube videos and attention stuff that's been thrust upon these decks. And also, I think they have pretty good matchups against blackwings. And that's definitely another thing to consider.
I think Kuraz is a deck that's like, since it's so like off the wall and like you're the only one that played it, I think a lot of people were like sleeping on it. They weren't taking it seriously as a legitimate deck, but I really think that the synergy with that deck is there. And if more people played it, I think it would garner more respect as like a deck that people have to prepare for and everything.
Yeah.
That deck is really, really underrated, I think.
In terms of topping, I think the Kuraz deck has a similar problem as the Fairy deck, and that it's just obnoxiously hard to pilot. Although it doesn't have the problem of getting blown out by like crazy sideboard cards like these two. So that's kind of nice, I guess. But we might see one or two of these decks sneak through. And then what do you think about the teleport Krebons deck?
I think it's a cool idea.
Powerwell.
I'm not sold that it's better than the Diva engine in terms of like in the zombie deck. I'm not sure that the psychic stuff is better than the Diva stuff, just because it takes more turns to set up to get them in the grave and all that.
Yeah.
But I do think that the psychic package with Teleconnect Powerwell is really interesting, and I'd love to see where people put it, because I think it can go more places than just in the zombie deck. And I think it's got to find a home somewhere. It seems really interesting. I think Krebons is just by himself a really cool card.
Yeah, he can just wall things surprisingly long. I feel like the argument for Diva is that it's just like a one-card starter and you don't need any setup. Right. But the Powerwall plays, like, the fact that it doesn't require normal summon is super crazy. And it's just like a free plus that summons like a monster that's just objectively better than Diva by itself.
Right.
So I can definitely see it's a dark. It's just a better monster than Diva in every way.
The dark for allure, all kinds of stuff.
So it's like in Diva decks you'll have these problems like drawing dead Divas and stuff. Whereas Krebons is not nearly as individually terrible as Diva is.
Right. So. Yeah, and actually you can, like, in the battle phase you can E-tele to push for like 1200 more damage, it's actually not.
Yeah, and you get to play teleport. That's pretty good too.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have this kind of RPS situation, by the way, where it's like Blackwings loses to Fairies, but then the real like next level gamers realize that Fairy loses to Frogs, right? So
yeah,
Frogs are actually the sleeper breakout deck.
And Frogs are also good against Blackwings.
Are they? I thought they were.
I think so.
Are they really?
I think Frogs are good against
I feel like conventional wisdom says that Blackwings are good against Frogs, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I've never quite been able to...
I like the Frog, the matchup with Blackwings as a Frog player.
I feel like the issue is Blackwings can just kill you a lot of the time. Like...
They can if you like leave them in open board and they have like a really good special summoning hand, but I'm not sure how many games you're going to win with any deck against that kind of a hand.
All right.
From the Blackwing player.
Then if you want to pre for Frogs, though, then you play Zombies, right?
True.
Okay, so I think this is just a good deck.
All the way back to the beginning, and then Fairies are good, because Fairies are good against the Zombies.
Zombies is just a good deck, period, I think, and we'll probably stay that way for a while.
Yeah, I don't see them... I think they're here to stay, and as informed, which is funny, since it was so long that people weren't really taking Zombies seriously, and I just think they're gonna be a mainstay. Just Goblin Zombie, the searching ability, the ability to plus off synchros and search for any utility zombie, plus having a monster reborn that interacts with the grave.
Yeah, Book of Life is just such an unfair card when it resolves, so that's definitely something. Alright, we already kind of went over these two. Kurez deck, definitely a sleeper option. I think this deck is very competitively viable, not just a meme. Check it out. Quick draw. So you said you thought there would be more quick draw. Would you like to explain this?
I think people might have seen the success that Housegear had, our teammate, with the Volcanic quick draw, and I really think that Volcanic quick draw is a really strong deck.
Yeah.
And playing more of a control style game, like really slow with decrees, I could see that having some success.
I am a fan of the Volcanic quick draw list, so it'll be interesting to see if it does well again. Housegear was one of the only based decks in the top 8 of the last Ribbit. Not trying to throw any shade at the other top decks, but do more, do better.
Once again, it's another deck that I think is good against fairies and good against frogs.
Yeah, it's definitely good against fairies, for sure. That matchup is very pretty.
Having Drill being able to push through the dupe block and outrace your monarchs every turn.
Fairies
just
are...
looping Dandy and just hitting for 12 every turn is always gonna beat out the more traditional frog monarch list.
Fairies are kind of weird, and then I feel like they're actually worse against the decks that their boss monster is good against. Like, if you're in a matchup with Fairy where your win con is just Christia or Bust, I feel like you're in serious trouble. Whereas the decks you clown on are the ones where the recruiters and the warrior ladies just do the work. So
yeah, it's interesting. Fairy's a really interesting deck where it's kind of like an aggro stun deck, and then I don't know. Yeah, this a lot of Fairy players say that in the frog matchup, for example, they're we just have to get to Christia as soon as we can.
That's Cope though. they have no chance. Anyway, Lightsworn. Why did we put this here? Did Joy Boy get you to put this here? I'm okay. Whatever. Just explain it.
Lightsworn, good deck. Always will be.
Always will be. I don't know. Could be kind of like a Gladiator Beast situation where it was a traditional good archetype and it gets power corrupt.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Yeah,
you're right.
Lightsworns are just insane.
The ceiling is just too high, I think, for them to ever get power corrupt. They're just the sack hands are just on another level, so it's difficult to see them being power corrupt ever. They'll probably always be good. I agree with that. All right, Machina. All right, I think this is another one of your ideas.
This one is purely because I think people are gonna be willing to experiment in this tournament. Because I think Machina are one of the most unexplored archetypes in the entire format, and I'd be really interested to see what people can come up with.
I'd say the Machina engine is kind of objectively broken on paper, right?
For sure.
But it just gets gatekept by Cyber Dragon, and a lot of people who play these sorts of decks say that it's not that bad, and they're wrong. It is that bad.
It's definitely bad, but if you can kill them fast enough, they won't draw their Sidra.
That's some copium right there. For sure. All right. Well, here's another deck you argued for, which is flamvells. Now, I'm a big flamvell fan, but I just don't really see it.
Deck.
It is a base deck, but I don't get why it would be better in this field. I think it's pretty terrible against frogs. It's probably not that good. Maybe it's good against fairies. It runs over the recruiters, but
I like flamvells against
fairies are really
zombies.
good against level 8 synchros.
I like flamvells against zombies. I like them against a more pure blackwing list. I think they can have trouble with Vayu, and I think they'll have trouble with frogs. So it kind of just, and I think they're good against quick draw also. So I think it just depends on how much frogs and how much Vayu do we see.
All right, we put Grand Mole here because Grand Mole is just a good card.
Put Grand Mole in your deck.
I've played this in multiple decks now, and it's just ridiculous. I feel like people just need to tech in Grand Mole into more stuff. Honestly, the card is insane. It just answers so many threats just easily. It's so annoying. It's so obnoxious to deal with. There's not a lot of counterplay. I mean, ridiculous card.
At the very worst, it's going to force out a deep prison or something, and then you can summon something you care about.
Yeah. All right. We kind of also put Return here for some reason. I guess we have fairies and zombies, and those decks play Return.
And what I was saying is, even Vayu decks are now playing Return, just to summon back Sirocco's and stuff. They're often playing like Chaos Sork to set up the return.
It's kind of weird that they weren't always playing return, because I feel like...
Yeah, it's just that they were like, well, we can't summon back the Vayu Synchros since they're improperly summoned, and Vayu summoning back isn't even that good. But it's like...
just summoning a bunch of dudes is enough.
And I guess it has like some anti-synergy with Oppression too, but...
I guess, but Oppression...
Very strong
we should have put Oppression in the down category, honestly. People play this card less, I feel like. Now that everyone mains outs to it and stuff. But maybe with the discard traps down, it's actually up. I don't know. I don't know where to put it.
Remains to be seen.
Maybe we'll just leave it neutral on Oppression. It'll always be a strong card that shapes the meta, but...
Anyways, return, busted card.
All right.
Shouldn't be legal. If you can play it, and you'll steal games that you'd have no business winning.
So, here's the cards you gotta play to pre for fairy decks. We're telling you to play these.
For the tournament, deck Devastators.
Fen really wanted us to tell people to play these in their side, so I don't know why.
Just max out 3 each.
But yeah, definitely just play 3 of both of these in your side decks to ruin fairy players' day. I don't know why that's good or why we should support that, but do it.
See, the thing with deck dev itself is
it is the name.
It's actually just kind of insane for a blackwing or a Vayu deck to play, because it kills all the decks that supposedly have good matchups against you, and you can kind of preserve your spot as the top deck of the format with deck dev if you're able to get them off.
Yeah.
Kills frogs, fairies.
I think you should play it for sure, but I don't agree that frogs are that good against blackwings. Nor do I agree that deck dev is that great against frogs either. Well,
I mean, if they have the Treeborn already in rotation, then maybe not. But
what if their hand's just a bunch of monarchs, like, or whatever, you know?
Yeah, I get you.
Okay, I don't know, but it's the name of the event.
Against zombies, even though the zombies want to be in the grave, it's still decent against them.
You gotta play it because it's the deck dev tournament, and that's why.
True.
All right,
absolutely true.
Vortex is a card I've been putting in like every side, and it feels really, really ridiculous every time. I'm a big fan of this. I'm playing this in everything now. I just think it's good against so many things.
I think this card... Whoop.
Oh, gee.
Did it save?
It should be. I think I pressed save like a billion times.
There we go. Yeah, wasn't Vortex like banned in like 2007 or something? This card was...
I don't think so.
It was like banned or limited. It's got to...
It might have been on the limited list. I don't think it was ever banned. I could be wrong.
Anyways, Vortex is a strong card.
I don't know. GX is kind of a blind spot in my knowledge of game history.
Especially with even the quote-unquote pure Blackwing lists are going like even more into the Vayu side and like swarming the board with summons. I think we're in a meta now where like most decks are trying to be pretty aggro and like summon monsters and overwhelm the opponent.
Just
where Vortex just seems crazy.
Look at all these decks we've listed outside of Blackwings even. I feel like it's good against like all of these. Maybe not the Teledad one because they'll always make Stardust or something, I guess. But that's about like all of these decks get messed up by Vortex, I feel like.
Yeah, and hitting like a goblin.
And even some of these down here. So, yeah.
Vortex is just a good card.
Speaking of good cards, Snowman Eater. I love this card. I
think it's so good.
You guys all remember the side deck tier list that I did. And I put this in S tier, and I put it in the thumbnail. And that's probably top 5 thumbnails of all time, even when I've got like 1,000 videos in the future. This will always be one of my favorite thumbnails. But yeah, Snowman Eater, crazy card. Just stops aggro decks in their tracks completely.
OTK against Hero Beat.
FTK against Hero Beat. How do they get over it? Yeah, I love Snowman Eater. It's really good against Fairies too. I think it's insane against Fairies. They just hit him with a recruiter and then they feel bad, you know? Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Thunder King.
Spending an honest... Or it wouldn't even work. Honest doesn't even work on...
No, you can't honest over this.
That's amazing.
You can collude over it after you attacked in with your Shura.
Yeah. Or like using a DD Warrior Lady on a card that's just sitting there in defense.
Yeah, it's such negative tempo against aggro decks, so crazy card. Play it if you can. This card. You argued for this
Ryo.
card. I don't get it.
I love Ryo. I think Ryo is a great card. It stops all the synchro decks. It stops zombies and heroes from doing all their searching. I just think this card is sick, and more people need to play it in their side deck.
I'm less of a fan of splashing these, like, stun monster normal summons into stuff, because I feel like they just lose to any piece of removal in a way that other side deck options don't.
I get you. I just really like this card, and I think it protects you if your deck is like weak to deck dev, and you want to throw in some cards that don't lose to it, and you want to be more proactive going second, so you're not just setting a bunch of weenie monsters. Having the Ryo is really nice.
Yeah, the floodgate's also a lot more narrow in Edison. I think there's not a lot of
it's very narrow,
searching going on.
But I think the stopping all the inherent special summons is an underrated effect.
Yeah, it's good against the synchro stuff on here for sure.
It's
amazing against this
against
deck.
Red Med, you know.
It's crazy against Machina gadgets and like Gladiator beasts, but like no one plays those, you know. But if
stops
people
Christia, stops Judgment Dragon.
Yeah, but like there's no way Fairies don't just out this, right? Like just with a Warrior Lady or an Honest or anything.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I don't think this card is good against Fairies. You wouldn't side it in, but I probably wouldn't bring
it. Like, I probably wouldn't bring it against Lightsworn. Like, think about it. Loses to Honest, it loses to Jane, it loses to Raikou, it loses to Celestia. Can't even stop Wolf. Like, they just mill a wolf and kill it.
It cannot stop a wolf. That is a problem.
So, yeah, I don't know about that. On the other hand, Crow is good against Lightsworn. Now, I kind of object to putting this in the up category because I feel like this card was always up. This is like the second or third most sided card in every tournament behind Cyber Dragon or something. Isn't it?
Yeah, it's got to be.
Okay, wait.
It might be the most because
you
some
argued
people are
it?
siding 3.
You argued it because people are maining it now.
I think main deck Crow is legit in a lot of decks. Not every deck, but I think
maybe
Vio and Blackwing can main it. I think Quick Draw can main it.
If you're playing like Dad, I think it's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not a fan of putting like Pre in the main deck. I don't know.
The thing is with DD Crow is that even the quote-unquote bad matchups like Blackwing are getting better for DD Crow, where like now they're playing multiple copies of Bayou. You're still hitting the blizzards. I think it's just dead way less often. So if you get caught in like what would have been considered a bad matchup with DD Crow in the main, you're not like crying because you have it in your hand. It still will see some use.
I feel like I'd rather have a good card though than a mid card.
But no one's expecting the
whatever.
DD Crow in the main.
I feel like it was in the main of a couple decks that topped, so now people are going to expect it though, you know?
Perhaps.
Maybe? I don't know. What about Bottomless? This card's good against the Blackwing decks.
Yeah. I think people are moving away from the discard traps and they're moving back towards Bottomless.
Yeah, and Deep Prison too. People play that. I've seen a lot more of it. They're just kind of good removal options, I think.
Yeah, the 1-for-1 removal is just good, especially when it's permanently removing them.
Mm-hmm. So,
like stacking a Blackwing doesn't feel great when they're just going to normal summon it and get their Whirlwind Search again next turn.
Yeah, that's true. Wing Blast is definitely a lot worse.
Or like Wing Blasting a Monarch feels pretty bad too.
I'm a fan of siding this card too if you're not maining it. I think it's a decent side deck card as well. Mm-hmm. Depends on what your trap lineup looks like and how heavy it is though, I guess. But I guess we have sort of come to the conclusion of our list, so if you think there's something that we forgot, let us know in the comments. If you think we're stupid and wrong and dumb, let us know in the comments. If you think that we're right, definitely let us know, and we'll pin that comment.